Hello everyone, this is Hannah Musa and this is my presentation for MPA 510 on the California Department of Motor Vehicles versus the SoCal Auto Club. So the reason I chose these two organizations is because one, the DMV is public and AAA is private. Also because AAA does provide a few of the DMV services as well. They do provide driving education, especially for teen drivers. They do provide places like the DMV where you can get behind the wheel training and things like that. And also another big one for me that helped me in the past is auto registration renewal, which helped me a lot in the past before the DMV allowed for it to be online. I didn't have to go to the DMV every time, and I could just go to AAA and just get that done a lot quicker. So it's another reason I chose the two. Okay, and getting some similarities between the two and connecting them to the theories that we've discussed. Starting off, I want to talk about Douglas McGregor and his theory why, and especially how he talks about people working on their own without having to be under someone's authority constantly, because they're working based on their commitment to the organization and the organization's objectives. And then also with Mary Parker Follett as well, talking about how she discussed how it's easier to work with people and not under them. So kind of similar to theory Y, not having to be managed by someone constantly. And then with Luther Gulick, he talks about the positive accord theory, which involves planning, organizing, staffing, directing, coordinating, reporting, and budgeting. So you see all of that at work within both the organizations as well as the two other theories, making them very effective. Especially with the first two theories, you don't get the vibe when you walk in that the employees there are being micromanaged or anything like that, but you get the sense that they know what they're doing, they've been well trained, and they can work on their own because they know the objectives that they're working for. And then looking at the differences between the two, starting with Paul Appleby, he talks about public versus private employees. So looking at the DMV, of course, they're all public and government employees. So he talks about in his writing how a public employee or government employee is going to be under a lot more scrutiny than, say, a private employee at AAA. Kind of an example would be if someone at the DMV gets fired, they're a lot more likely to be in the news because, of course, people are paying attention because that's where their tax dollars are going, because, of course, the public is served through the DMV, and people, of course, are going to care much more about that than a private employee at the AAA being fired. And then a few other differences, starting with Woodrow Wilson and Frank Goodnow. Of course, they talk about the divide between politics and administration. And of course, you see that divide at the DMV because it is a government agency. And of course, policies are made by elected officials, and they're then being told to implement those policies. So one of the examples I thought of was the Real ID, which began last year and I think is up to 2020 for the time to get it. So that's an example of basically a policy that an elected official created, and then that being implemented by the DMV. And then looking at AAA, you see the difference there because despite having that connection with the DMV and providing some of their services, they're not under, they're not being run necessarily by elected officials, and they're able to focus on what they're about, what they're all about, of course, which is one of them being roadside assistance, and then of course membership and everything, discounts, travel, things like that. So they're able to focus on what they need to. And then looking at Max Faber, he talks about bureaucracy and the differences between um, public and private bureaucracy, which of course you see that both the agencies are bureaucracies, but he talks about how a public bureaucracy is basically referred to as bureaucratic authority versus private, which is referred to as bureaucratic management. And this is because he says it's because of capitalism, and also because, of course, private agencies are not being run by elected officials. They're being run by managers who are not, in the in a government sector. So they're, different in that respect. Okay, so that's it, and these are my references. So I have links to AAA and the DMV, along with, of course, the textbook referred to there. I use several theories out of that. So thank you everybody for watching, and I hope you have a great weekend. Good night.